when I was a kid, and I did not like them. Yeah.
I don't remember that toy.
What,
The
the
eyes
doll?
actually followed you around?
No.
No, they just appeared to.
Yeah. You know, like paintings do.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Somehow, and I don't totally know how, because Ramon had this thing for a long time, and until 2009, it had kind of just been this obscure thing that he owned. He didn't really talk about it that much, but a guy by the name of Stephen Greer found out about this skeleton he was at a conference, and somebody offhandedly mentioned it to him. This tiny little skeleton that they knew some guy who owned. That makes sense, right?
That's more better.
That's more better. It's pretty close, yeah. And so Mr. Greer, or Stephen, we'll just call him Stephen, he managed
Call him
to...
Mr. Greer, please.
Mr. Greer managed to convince Ramon that he could investigate the skeleton. So in 2009, that's when kind of this whole story kind of started to hit the mainstream. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah. I mean, he is the one that raised all the attention.
He sure did.
And then when did the movie come out?
That was 2012?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe
Serious?
2013? Yeah, 2012.
Yeah, I know we're going to get into that, but...
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit. So, Mr. Greer assembled a team of, we're going to call them, air quote, respected scientists, unquote. Some of the people on the team, I think, are actually...
Professionals in their field?
Well, I think some of them are actually good scientists. Mm-hmm. Some of the research that I've read, I trust these people.
They're competent.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Stephen Greer, maybe not quite
Stephen
so
Greer,
much.
maybe not so much, and some of the other people on his team, maybe not so much. But we'll make sure to make note of when we believe people and when we don't believe people, because you know us, we're good at that. So yeah, Mr. Greer and his team went to Barcelona in 2012 to conduct extensive research on the skeleton. Larry Nolan, who, after some Googling, he's a lot of UFO stuff, this guy. He's definitely a ufologist.
He's into it.
Nolan?
He's into it. Yeah, Dr. Nolan. But he is also a geneticist at Stanford.
Same guy, you sure?
Same guy, yeah. So I guess he's probably not a total hack?
Maybe not.
I don't know. It's hard to tell with these people sometimes, right?
You think he's got tenure?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, he must have tenure.
Yeah, probably, yeah. So anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about the other members of the team, or at least one other member of the team later, but I do want to just first start out by describing the skeleton. I know that we have some listeners that, listen to us while they're driving, things like that. So let's talk about what the skeleton looked like and what makes it so strange, other than the fact that it's 6 inches tall.
Okay.
So let's go with that. The team examined Atta.
Attaboy.
And they took DNA samples from the distal ends of the anterior ribs, which is the fancy way of saying that they took samples from the front ends of the ribs, which should have been connected to the sternum. There's no sternum on this skeleton, which isn't really that weird to me, I guess, in the long run.
I don't think so. I mean, I'm not sure how well formed the sternum is
At that
at a
point?
young age. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's... well, at what age? That's the question.
Well, yeah, that is a big question on this, but it
yeah.
doesn't really... I mean, in a human fetus, the sternum forms... It's there.
I think the sternum forms in like the 4th or 5th month. Once the rib cage firms up and all the organs have developed, then it kind of... Because it shouldn't create too early, because it could make the cavity too small. So I think that's one of the reasons that it waits longer.
Right.
But there is a big dispute about this critters at this thing's age.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, and we are absolutely going to get into that in a minute. But so that's where they took the DNA samples from, and there was bone marrow in the skull as well. So they took a little bit of that for testing.
And I've seen a lot of hubbub about, if you see photos of this and you see the back of the head, there's a hole in it, and they say that's because they punched that hole to get the DNA.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you also hear a lot of people on the internet say, oh no, that's obviously the cause of death.
Okay, so actually I can clarify this.
Okay.
They took CT scans and x-rays before they started to do anything exploratory. And you can see in the CT scans there's a fracture at the back of the head. It's not a huge hole in the back of the head where they had to cut through, but there is a visible fracture in the back of the skull. That's what they're talking about when they say that's the cause of death.
Well, I've seen some where they will say there's a
those people
hole
are
and
dumb.
that's...
Yeah.
Okay.
Or I guess
just want to point it out.
misinformed is probably a better way of saying it. They're misinformed. That big hole, as far as I can tell, they did cut it to extract.
Yeah, they
stuff.
put a hook in there to scrape material out.
Yeah, I am not of the impression that hole existed before.
Prior to the testing.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I'm in agreement with that.
But there was a fracture in the
Yeah,
skull.
there was actually a photograph too from prior where the hole was not there.
Where there was no hole, yeah.
So.
Yep. But that's good. So, like I said, they took x-rays and CT scans of the tiny skeleton to make sure that they could evaluate the body for any abnormalities before they did any, again, exploration.
So they were following good procedure.
They were following
Excellent
exceptional procedure. Yeah. Everything was done in a totally sterile environment. Everything was documented. People were taking pictures and filming the entire time, which is really important also, so you can document if somebody happened to do something that caused damage to it. You could come back later and say, okay, did one of us do this while we were exploring or did not?
So this isn't like when they did all the testing on the dinosaur bones and determined that they were part ostrich?
Yeah, no, not like that.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No. So at least during this part, during the examination, the procedures were very well followed. So Ada, as I've mentioned again and again, 6 inches long, which is
or tall. You'll hear it referred to as 6 inches tall.
Yeah, tall, long.
Tall works, I think, yeah.
Long, tall. Which is I think it's 15 centimeters is what I see. That's about equal. One place I saw it described as 150 millimeters, which I thought was silly. Why wouldn't you just use centimeters?
Might be a little more accurate to break it into millimeters. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah. Anyway, so it's about that size, again, for our not American measurers.
Measurers.
Yeah.
It's got a goofy looking head, though.
It's very elongated. It's you know what it reminds me of is the Crystal Skull from Indiana Jones.
That was a terrible movie, but
Yes,
I do know what you're talking about.
Movie,
so it's a very long, oval, almost skull.
Which would explain why a lot of people think it's an alien.
Yeah, and you can see there's some bone abnormalities just like in the formation of it. So it doesn't seem as though the skull was crushed post-mortem to be that way.
Like squeezed and collapsed on itself a little bit. I see what you're getting out of that. Yeah.
And like I said, there's a fracture on the back right side of the skull, which is often ruled as the cause of death. There's a tooth in the jaw, actually. I don't know if you guys actually got a chance to look at this or not. It's kind of interesting. There's an actual tooth in the jaw. It's not like little infant, nublins. It's like an actual, they describe it as a mature tooth, which is interesting.
Yeah. Well,
again, interesting.
Yeah, it's unusual.
It is unusual. There's a fracture on the right arm just above the elbow. The skeleton has just 10 ribs, which is weird. Humans have 12 ribs.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that. And after 2 months in utero, a human fetus will have developed all 12 ribs.
Generally.
Usually.
Yeah, usually.
Yeah. In almost every circumstance, yeah. Yeah. During the CT scan, it was revealed that there are lungs in this mummy skeleton thing, or were. Well,
remains of. They're still there.
And quote, what appears to be the remains of a heart structure, unquote. And this has caused the team at Stanford and also pretty much every researcher to look at this stuff to believe that it's a real skeleton of a real living thing.
It's not just a little carved.
It's not just a hoax.
Not just a little carved wooden.
No.
If this is a hoax, this is the best hoax ever.
I saw a very tongue-in-cheek thing recently when I was reading about this. I think it was actually just like an hour or two ago that said, the quote was, "This couldn't be a hoax unless it was hoaxed by aliens." I was like, oh God, of course you would go there.
Who says aliens don't have a sense of humor?
Yeah, really.
Practical jokers.
There's also a fairly pronounced curve to the spine. There's a hump, but I think that's just from the way it was preserved.
Near the shoulders.
Yeah, hump near the shoulders, kind of. But also the spine curves, like in a C shape.
It's got a serious
bit.
S curve to it.
Yeah.
Really
well, I don't
deep.
think it's an S curve. I don't think it ever curves back. Is the thing? It's just the C. It just curves the one way. And again, we don't know. I don't know certainly
It's hard
if
to
it's
say.
just from the mummification. Thank you.
The
The mummifying of it.
The mummifying, and also being wrapped up in a cloth and compressed could.
While there's still moisture in the body,
Yeah,
and then when
absolutely.
it dries out, it's gonna stiffen in whatever position it's at.
Yeah. And there's one more thing to mention. Well, I guess there's a few more things to mention. I want to mention how tiny the little feet are. Tiny little feet and
Tiny
hands.
little feet, smaller than yours.
Yeah, but smaller than mine, but also like proportionately tiny, right? I would say.
Yeah.
You can almost miss them, almost at the little bottom of the legs.
I didn't find them to be out of proportion, but then again, it is so small to begin with that's why I don't find them to be disproportionately small.
That's fair. The other thing that I have to mention is the knees. Knees, it turns out, for those of you who don't know, are a pretty good way of determining age, early years in life.
In humans.
In humans, yeah. Because when we're born, we don't really have kneecaps, which is a misnomer. We do have kneecaps, they're just all cartilage, and then they harden over time.
Ossification.
But when you're born, you basically don't have kneecaps.
Gross.
And you can look at the x-rays of knees. It's very interesting. There's they don't look like knees, basically, when you're an infant. They just don't. And it's hard to describe, so I would encourage you guys to go out and Google this, because it is kind of fascinating. I didn't really know this about knees.
Oh, what knees on babies look like?
Yeah.
It basically just looks like there's two leg bones and
there's like
nothing there.
There's little balls of bone on either side. But there's no noticeable joint, and there's no cap or anything like that.
It hasn't formed.
Right.
Babies are weird.
Babies are really weird.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. So they stay cartilage until you're about 3, and then they calcify all the way up until you're about 6 to 8, depending on your own personal development. But apparently, and I know Steve has some things to say about this that we'll tackle in the theories sections, but apparently Ada had fully formed kneecaps, which again, it's like hard to tell because he's so tiny that it's really hard to see what's going on.
I haven't seen anything that looks like a kneecap to me.
It's interesting, right? It's hard. Like I said, it's hard to tell, and we'll grab onto this a little bit more in the theories.
I know we're going to have to come back to this.
But you will see that around, and again, it's hard. I'm kind of 50-50 on it. Like, I don't know. I'm also not a scientist, so I can't look at that and be like, oh yeah, totally, that's a kneecap. I don't really know. Can you?
Yeah, of course. I got knees. I know what they look like.
The inside? You examine the inside of your knees regularly?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking no kneecaps, but
yeah.
Bob got it.
Yeah.
So people go ahead and say that with the knees and the presence of a developed tooth, that would put this being at having lived for some time. At least a year,
in other words,
outside of
the womb.
Yeah, in other words, it can't be a fetus. It can't be the skeleton of a fetus.
Right. That's the thing that you draw. That's the conclusion that you would draw from this information.
Yeah.
Again, we're going to talk about all this stuff in the theories, so everybody stop yelling at me, please.
There's some more to come.
Yeah, because there's another really big twist.
Right on.
It's a really big twist. And that is, you remember I said they took DNA from the ribs?
Yep.
And they tested that, as well as the bone marrow found in the skull. And apparently, the report is that Ada only shares 91% of its DNA with humans.
Okay.
Dun dun dun. For comparison, we share about 90% of our DNA with cats, 80% with cows, and 50% with bananas.
Oh my God.
So
I guess I shouldn't be eating cows, I guess.
No, I guess not. Yeah. And there is some variance.
I don't eat bananas.
There's variance between humans, right? That's an actual thing. There's genetic variance, but it's about 0.5% variance.
Half a percent.
Yeah, 0.5% variance between any Homo sapien.
Okay.
Yeah. One last thing. I keep saying that, right? I keep saying, and one last thing I have to mention, but one last thing.
It's fine. This is you have now gone to the same level as TV news.
Oh, that's true.
Which is, we're going to drop the story, but first we're going to tell you about this. We're going to come back with this main story, but now we're going to go to the weather. So that's what she's...
Isn't that annoying when they do that?
That's how she's formulated this.
Yeah, brilliant.
Okay, we'll be back after this word from our sponsors.
Yeah. One last thing. Again, it's actually the second to last thing.
And then we'll talk about the weather in Edinburgh?
Yeah. Okay. If you can say all the names, yeah, we will. Nobody really knows how old this thing is. Obviously, when they first found it, they thought, oh my God,
because it was mummified.
Because it was mummified and it didn't look like anything we knew about. And they were like, oh, maybe it's some like pre-Homo sapien type thing. Maybe it's a Neanderthal. Maybe it's, who knows? And they've come to the conclusion since then that it's like a couple decades old.
Yeah, at the most.
Yeah. But as I mentioned, Ripley of Ripley's Believe It or Not, his name is Robert Ripley. He's involved in the case, like I said.
Isn't he dead?
I'm sorry, he was.
Okay.
He was sort of involved.
Kind of, in a way. You guys know Ripley was obsessed with shrunken heads.
Oh, yeah.
Like, obsessed with shrunken heads.
Which is weird.
I kind of think shrunken heads are awesome.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
you know how many times I have found myself in front of the computer at 12 o'clock at night, drunk, and Googling shrunken heads and trying to figure out if the website that says I can buy one is legit or not?
I feel like I need to have a conversation with you about your adult, mature choices that you're making.
Seriously.
Wait, is it the drinking
Drunk
or the Googling?
At midnight, and you're choosing to Google shrunken heads, which makes me a little concerned about you.
That's a little weird, yeah. And what I want to know about these websites is, how does it work? Do you have to cut somebody's head off and mail it to them, and they shrink it for you?
Is it also like, are there like hot shrunken head
They're
singles?
authentic. They're authentic from natives. I don't know. I was drunk. Can we keep going, please?
I'm very concerned.
Actually, yeah.
We're going to have an intervention later.
When we wrap this up, I'm going to go out on eBay and see if there's anything out there.
I'm sure there is, yeah.
Probably is.
Yeah. Anyway, on Ripley's Shrunken Head's Quest for the Shrunken Head, which is an actual book, by the way. It's Ripley's Quest for the Shrunken Head. I almost bought it. I came closer than I ever have to buying a book for the podcast, so there's that. He found this tiny skeleton in the 1930s, early 1930s. He found this tiny skeleton he called Attaboy. He found his in Peru, but the Atacama Desert does actually go all the way up into Peru. It's like I said, it's really, really big desert. So Ripley called his skeleton Attaboy, and that's that. They look vaguely kind of similar. Not really.
No.
Not really.
No, they don't.
Actually, at all.
So
They are both 3 inches tall. Or 6 inches tall.
But Attaboy looks more akin to a shrunken head in terms of the shape and the texture in the photos that I've seen.
I think Attaboy's kind of cute. Not like the skeleton, but I think it's cute that Ripley called him that.
Oh, the name?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a cute name. Yeah, so, and Attaboy does look different. They don't really look the same.
Sort of.
Attaboy and Atta. I think it's true that the resemblance pretty much ends at their height.
I would say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, theories?
Theories.
I guess we're there.
I guess we are.
Aliens?
Let's start with hoax.
Oh, was it a hoax?
No.
I don't think so.
I actually don't think that there's anybody who seriously thinks it's a hoax, except for the anonymous forum user here and there who says, no, it's a hoax, didn't you know?
Well, it's easy to think it's a hoax.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was a hoax
I know
when
you did.
First started to read about it. And then once I saw the stuff about the CT scans, I knew, okay, right there, that proves it's not actually a hoax. It's
Not a little
something
carved,
real.
not a little carved wooden figurine.
Yeah. So, no, it's not a hoax.
No, not a hoax.
Yeah.
Also, probably not a cryptid, but you'll see that around.
Is this a fairy?
No.
Cryptid
If
as
it was
in
a cryptid, it could be a fairy.
It could be a fairy,
It's a
but
mummified
no wings.
fairy.
No wing structure. Wings have to have bones in them.
Do fairies
maybe.
actually have wings, though?
Yeah.
We don't know that.
We don't know anything.
Elves?
Right?
Yeah.
Could it be a Smurf?
It could be the South American version of a leprechaun.
Oh, ho, ho.
There you go.
It's true.
Or it could be
No.
the South American Bigfoot.
It could.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish
The
you
little
guys,
known.
I wish you guys were in the studio to see with how much sincerity Joe just said that. There was no laugh in his face for a moment. It was good.
Just all deadpan.
It
all
was.
the
It
time.
was totally deadpan. Okay, so those two out the window. Cool. That's the end of our theories.
Okay. Bye.
It's not? No? Okay. Next up, I guess, is aliens.
Yeah, they're obviously that theory has been put out there, so we have to talk about it. Yeah, quite a bit. Yeah, a lot of people think this is like the remains of an alien.
Yep.
But,
Well, and one of the things I will mention is there is a strong history of reported UFO activity around the Atacama Desert.
There's a strong history of reported UFO activity around most places.
hey, yeah.
I'm just putting it in perspective.
Yeah.
Well, so the theory is that this thing is an alien. It kind of, frankly, it looks really alien.
It does.
It looks
especially
very
the
alien.
shape of the skull.
With the shape of the skull and the size, to conceptualize of something being that size and like living is crazy.
Well, there's many creatures on our planet that are tiny.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
The problem is that unless maybe there's an alien race and they figured out a way to save space on interstellar trips to shrink themselves down to 6 inches tall.
Well, no, this thing is much like, was it the first or the second Men in Black, where there was the little guy that drove the human-sized robot?
Yeah.
I mean,
oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what this would be.
How long could you really survive if you're that size, though? Wouldn't you go extinct?
That's my big question.
The predators would all eat you. I mean, you'd be snacks. Owls would be snatching you out of the skies or whatever the equivalent.
Well, I
of the
guess,
owl is
the
over there.
argument would be that you might be from a planet that was so high gravity that everything was small.
Uh-huh.
So you could feasibly be the largest thing. It could be a race of shrimpkins from Futurama.
Well, it could be.
You guys remember that episode?
Nah.
Yeah.
Sort of.
When Bender becomes God and then meets God. They're just tiny little humans that live on him.
Yes.
It could have been that. I mean, aliens.
It's possible.
And I guess this is probably a good time to mention Dr. Greer, Mr. Greer. He's a doctor. He's a medical doctor.
He was a medical doctor. He was an ER doc, I think.
Oh, was he really?
He was a practicing doctor.
Yeah.
And then he sort of went off the deep end and
He left.
became an ufologist.
His
That's
practice.
a nice way of saying it, yeah.
He left his practice.
He did leave his practice. Our listeners may be familiar with the documentary Sirius, which is basically tries to prove that aliens are real.
It's about an hour long. We talked about it in the Gary McKinnon episode.
Yeah, it's actually 48 minutes long. I found it on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
48 minutes and like 50-something seconds.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
12 minutes for commercials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's perfect. And Dr. Greer is the guy who's in charge of that thing.
Well, he is in control of CSETI.
Yeah.
Which stands for the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Mm-hmm. And he started that in the mid-2000s, I want to say. Mm-hmm. And then it was sometime, I think it was the late 2000s or 2010, somewhere in there, he then began the Disclosure Project.
Yeah.
Which is the one where it's all the ex-government employees testifying to him on camera about aliens.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He's a major ufologist.
He is.
He is, I'm not making fun of him when I say this, he has bought in quite heavily to the belief, and he's very committed to it.
He is.
But that makes me question him quite a lot.
Yeah, it makes me question with things like this just because I think there's that confirmation bias there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Particularly with something like this that is kind of open to interpretation, it is hard to know what this thing is for sure. But the fact that I guess I don't know. It's hard. It's hard when you're hearing a ufologist constantly saying, "Oh, it's obviously an alien. It's proof."
Yeah, good luck
constantly.
with that.
Never once saying, "I don't know. It probably isn't an alien."
Well, the other thing about guys like Greer is they tend to be a magnet for lunatics who come to them with crazy stories and
people who are like-minded. Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
no, I mean, but also that's not to say that everybody who believes in UFOs or aliens is a lunatic.
Right. That's what I'm.
Y'all know
it's
me.
like-minded in terms of believe in or want to. But there's a broad spectrum of that.
There are crazy people in all walks of life.
Oh yes.
And there are extra crazy people in some walks of life.
Yep.
Which are this one is one of them. one.
Yeah.
It kind of is.
Yeah. So that's a problem already.
Yeah.
And my one concern with Greer being as involved as he is in this, because he was. What's that?
You only have one concern.
Well, no, this is one of my big concerns.
Okay.
Is that the story of how Ada was found and all of this stuff, I've never been able to find the source of it. In other words, you always hear the story, but you never find anything from the origin of that, where it actually began, and the early accountings of it reported anywhere, anything. It popped up, and it popped up on the radar from what I found.
There's
with Greer.
The guy that actually found it, you can find the first publication of talking about this in the media at all. And it was around the time when that scavenger found it. But it was...
when was that again?
2003-ish.
Okay.
But it was in a tabloid in Chile. That was the first announcement. So again, it's one of those things where it's like, you can confirm that it did happen at a time, but
the equivalent of the Weekly World News reported on it, and not Bat Boy.
Yeah. But which is kind of a bummer, because we do know it exists and we do know it's real, but they were the only ones who didn't cry hoax immediately, so they printed it. And then, and I guess to that point, Greer never tells the whole story. He always just says, a token hunter, a token collector.
Yeah, he's got a very sanitized version.
But he doesn't
of the
ever
story.
say like he was robbing graves in the church. He doesn't say anything about that. They always say it in this kind of amorphous like pouch. He never says it was in a white cloth. It was this velvet tie. All of the kind of nitty gritty details that almost humanize it. He doesn't ever talk about. So I think to that point, he is. I mean, he's trying to skew it a little more towards. If you're just saying, it was found in a pouch just in the desert. That sounds way more like an alien died or got dropped off. The remains of an alien got dropped off than...
Because they have a burial ritual that involves pouches?
I don't know. Just more than like it was found in a grave in a church, wrapped in white and purple. That sounds way more human than it was found in a pouch in the desert.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna let the Greer issue go.
Okay.
That's just I really, really question whenever he's involved.
Yeah. Well, that's fair. And the alien stuff. Do you have anything else to add to the alien theory?
Well, I would add to that is if it is an alien, then how does it happen to have 91% human DNA?
Okay, well, actually, that's a good segue into our next theory, which is that it's an alien-human hybrid.
Okay.
But that goes down the crazy rabbit hole because it's mostly Greer being the proponent or being the most vocal proponent of this theory. This is his theory, actually, is that it's a hybrid. And it goes kind of from, what if it's an alien-human hybrid, to, what if we are all alien-human hybrids? That's what we are. That's how humans existed.
Well, then we're
That's how we came about. So then we would share 91...
We're not actually alien-human hybrids because we're humans, so whatever our
I don't know, Neanderthal hybrids or something like that.
Yeah.
The things that we branched off from, that they went off to die, but they were very humanoid. They were, we were like them. And then we changed somehow. And
wait, you saying aliens came to Earth, they were slumming with Neanderthals, and then they went home?
Yeah.
So Earth is what, like the dance club of...
It's okay. I guess we can kind of go into this. I don't want to make this whole episode about this, but there are two theories on this. You're looking at me like I'm a crazy person, but I'm just going to keep talking. One of the theories is that it's a controlled experiment, that aliens who are hyper-intelligent came to Earth and wanted to... It's like controlled evolution, that they altered the DNA of Neanderthals to create Homo sapiens.
And now they're watching the experiment play out?
Yes. The other theory is...
That's the long game.
That's the long game. The other theory is that aliens... I guess there's a lot more than that. Aliens, in order to survive, came and intermingled.
Their species?
So in order to elongate their species, had to kind of alter what their species was. So they came to intermingle their people with our people, and that totally changed and progressed into Homo sapiens. Or, nightclub Like, they were curious.
They just came here and had sex with
wanted to
all of our
see.
women and then took off again.
Yeah. So those are the three like main theories of the alien hybrid, human hybrid theory. So then this theory would be that this was a subset that went a little wrong but has survived maybe in the desert. Or maybe they're the ones who were the initial ones and that they, bred with Neanderthals and so were the size basically of Neanderthals. But
so the problem with that though is the age thing, is that if that is the case, then it would have to be much, much, much older.
Unless it was coming to check up on us. So if it was the controlled